Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca and today I'm really excited because we are going to be discussing how to involve kids with houseplants. And I'm actually sitting in my daughter's freshly decorated nursery. I'm so excited. I just wanted to film in here because we're talking about kids and the background's really cute. So I used to be a teacher and I had plants in my classroom, and it was a really fun way to sort of passively introduce and teach kids about houseplants, even though I was a language arts and social studies teacher. But it really inspired me to involve any future kids that I had in plants as much as I could from as early as I could, because I just noticed that the kids loved the plants. It was so cute, and I just want to share this knowledge with you and some ideas that I have and some things that I actually implemented when I was a teacher. Okay, so not all of these are going to be applicable to every age range, so let's keep that in mind, but this first one is good for all ages, and that is to just bring kids into planty spaces and just let them free. See what they do, have plants in your environment and see how they interact with them just naturally. Kids are very curious and they will probably ask questions, especially if you are adding plants where there were not plants before. They're observant. They're going to notice the difference and they're going to ask you why. They're going to ask you what it is, what its name is, and there's just so many fun opportunities for learning and growing and just like bonding between the two of you when you have something like that. Like you bring in a houseplant and maybe you even go shopping together and you ask them which plants look really interesting to them and why. It just makes a really great like conversation piece. If you didn't know, I have a 3-month-old baby, and what I've been doing is just putting her in my plant room. I have a sunroom that has lots of plants in it. There's a lot to look at, so every morning I will have breakfast in there while she sits in her bouncer, and it's so sweet just to see her like eyes darting around the room looking at everything. That really is like the only room in our house where she is like lit up, eyes wide open, looking all around. I mean, there is a lot to look at in there, so that's probably why, but either way, it's just really sweet to see her already starting to interact with her environment. My next tip for you, if you want to involve your kids with houseplants, is to read them houseplant themed books. Now, there are some kid houseplant books out there. I'll have a few of them on the screen and link down below if you're interested. And I actually was at a little boutique in town and I saw this one, and this isn't like, obviously this is not like houseplants, but this is a very cute book. It's called Little Me by Eve Bishop and Penny Johnson, and there's just like cute planty themed things. So in it there's a garden shed, and then there is a garden like planting seeds and stuff like that. So I just think it's really sweet. This is a greenhouse. It's just really cute, and I think that just little things like this is like a really great way to involve your kids in houseplants and just like building awareness that these things exist. We can't all have greenhouses, and I will eventually have a greenhouse if I can finish building it one day, but I just think books are a really great way to discover new things, and especially houseplant books. So much fun. My next tip is one that I used all the time in my classroom, and that is to name your plants together and come up with stories about them. My students were very interested in the plants, some of them more than others, but they all were aware of them and intrigued to a certain degree. And so some of them had names, some of the plants had names, all the kids had names. And I would have them write little stories about that plant, like what it was seeing throughout the day, or maybe where it came from, like an origin story. I would just put up a prompt on the board and then have them go wild. Kids are so creative, and their minds are just amazing. Like they can come up with anything, and they had the funniest stories. So that's a really fun way to not only, you know, bring enrichment into your children's lives, like academically, but also just to have them be involved in the things around them. This is a really fun way to just like get them in the mindset to even think of the plants day to day. I think that's a really great habit to build if you want them to someday take ownership of plants, to check on the plants and think about them and see, you know, oh, what can we update in Jerry's story today? You know, if you have a certain plant and it's growing, you can have a prompt about, you know, what it's been going through in order to get this new leaf, or I don't know, so many different things. I will put some prompts on the screen. If you are interested, you can take a screenshot or write any of these down, because yeah, sometimes I know that it can be hard to come up with these, but I've got one of those language arts teacher minds, so here's some ideas if you're interested. This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build your business online and sell products, have a blog, send email campaigns. You can do so many things through Squarespace. I personally use Squarespace for my personal website and my podcast website, and I actually just recently updated some photos on our podcast website because we got some photos done in February, and the website just looks really nice, like even with the new photos. But if I wanted to make any changes to the colors or the fonts or the layout, it's extremely easy to do that with the drag and drop templates that Squarespace offers. So we do sell merch on our website, and it was very, very easy to start the shop on Squarespace, and we also connected it to a third-party fulfillment system, so we don't have to worry about any of that. Really easy to set up. I would highly recommend using Squarespace for your online store, your blog, your email subscriptions. If you are interested in getting started on Squarespace, you can go to squarespace.com/BeccaDeLaPlants to get started with a free trial. And then when you're ready to launch your website, you can use the code BeccaDeLaPlants for 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. All of these are sort of like going up in age. So this one is going to be for a little bit of an older child, but not necessarily super old. So this one is to do simple plant chores together. And this one I think is the best. I was just mentioning that my mom had houseplants, but I don't remember ever seeing her care for them. And I think it would be a really sweet thing to involve your kids in your houseplant care. And this is kind of something that I am taking into just my parenting in general, like my parenting philosophy. I'm only 3 months in, so really we can't take this too seriously just yet. But what we've always said is that Nora, my daughter, is like coming into our lives, you know, and obviously our lives have changed to a certain degree, but at a certain age, it's like you can sort of resume more or less what you were doing. And so houseplant care really never stopped for me. Like the day I came home from the hospital, I had to water my plants, you know? So anytime I have to take care of my plants and it's going to take an extended period of time, I'm just wearing her in a carrier. And I have had a few questions like, why don't you put her down? Or why don't you do this or that? I like to involve her, and she naps really well in a carrier. So, you know, I'm hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. She's still very young. So I think that you can do this from a very young age. You know, I think that carriers are a really great thing to have some sort of semblance of normalcy and like do the things that we need to do. Dishes, laundry, plant care. It's all under that umbrella. But when they're a little bit older and you're not necessarily wearing them, it's a really fun thing just to have them help you. Now, obviously kids aren't going to be maybe the greatest help, like maybe not the most productive help. So maybe don't pick the chores that are like really labor intensive. Maybe pick a couple of small plants that need to be repotted and do that with your kid just to help them like learn, you know, there's so much to teach them involving like all the plant chores. Like when you're repotting, you're teaching them that they're growing not only above the soil, but under the soil. And when you're watering them, you're teaching them that the plant is using that water, it's taking up energy, and it's using it to make new leaves. It's sort of like a life cycle lesson, and it's so much fun. So also kids just like love to get dirty. So, you know, helping them get their hands dirty in the soil and making a mess with the water. Maybe you water the plants outside that day with the hose so that it can be a little bit messier. I think that's just such a fun way to involve them, and you're also getting things done that need to be done while involving them in those things. I think that's a super important thing just in life, is to just involve them as much as you can into your day-to-day activities. And for example, when I was a teacher, this is something that I didn't do because logistically it was a little bit harder. I was actually watering my plants in like the janitor closet in the bathroom, like in a little, basically like where they would dump out like the chemicals from like the mop buckets and stuff. And obviously I'm not going to bring kids into that room, but if I had a plantipotty, which is that bucket that I water with, I would have totally involved them in watering, because that would have been so much easier to empty out at the end of the day just by myself and like let them use a little watering can to water the plants. I think so many of them would have absolutely loved that. Also, something that I did with the students was I had a spider plant, and throughout the year it would put out babies. And so there was one student who just really loved the plants, and so I let him like take a cutting and put it in water, and then we watched it root. And it was just really cool, because if you've never seen that, even as an adult, it's really, really interesting. So you can imagine as a kid, it's like mind-blowing. And my last tip for you is to give your kid, or whatever kid you are involving, ownership over a house plant. Whether that be putting a plant in their room or assigning them a certain plant in a part of the house, give them the opportunity to succeed or fail, whatever it may be, with that house plant. Obviously, I would not just like throw my daughter in the deep end and like let her kill a plant and then feel really horrible about it. Maybe I would give her some guidance, like, oh, maybe that plant is looking a little bit tired. Maybe it needs a little bit of a drink, you know, things like that, giving them clues and nudges. And this is obviously going to depend on the age of the child, but I don't know if I would, I mean, actually, I don't even know what age would be appropriate to do this because I've only really ever been around, you know, my own child and then 10 to 12-year-old kids that I was teaching. So they were definitely capable of doing this, but I don't know at what point that would start. So that's more on your discretion as the parent or adult in the situation. But I can't imagine like how exciting it would be as a kid, because kids feel everything like times 100. How exciting it would be to get a new leaf on your plant and knowing that you were entirely responsible for it. I feel like that is such a cool feeling because as an adult, I get extremely excited. So I can't even imagine being a kid and feeling everything so much more. So some plants that I would suggest for this. So I would definitely say veer on like the easier side of things. So we're sticking to Monstera deliciosa. That would be a really fun one because if you buy one small and juvenile, you can watch it mature together and get the splits in the leaves. That was probably the most exciting plant for me personally to collect, and I'm an adult, so I can't imagine what a kid would think. I think they'd love it. Next, I would recommend a spider plant because they put out lots of babies, so that's great opportunities to teach them about propagation and eventually repotting. And then once they repot it and it'll put out its own babies, it's kind of like a really cool system, like a family system of plants. I mean, I just think the spider plant is amazing for kids. Plus it's very hardy and the roots look very different than other houseplants. So when you unpot it, it would be like a really cool visual experience for them too. And then the third plant that I would recommend would be either the snake plant or the ZZ. Now these are a little bit more on the basic side and they might not show like a ton of growth depending on where you have the plants. But I think both of them are really cool when they do grow in because they start off so tiny and then they get really big. And you know, you could talk about how babies start off really small and then kids, as they get bigger and bigger, they grow just like this snake plant leaf or just like this ZZ plant that starts out from the soil and then it grows all the way up and it puts out its leaves. Like, I don't know, there's just so many ways that you can connect back the growth of those two plants to a kid in a way that they would like understand and feel, I don't know, like they would resonate with that maybe. I also would recommend those ones because they're just very hardy, and if the kid does forget to water it for like multiple weeks to months, the plants will probably be fine. So you won't have to deal with any sort of like heartbreak situation. I would definitely say make sure that the plant is getting adequate light because you want to set the plant up for the most success because, you know, kids might forget to water it for a portion of time, but obviously you are probably going to be coming in and out of their room a certain amount of time, so you will probably notice if the plant isn't looking too good, and then you can direct the child to check on it and make sure that it has everything it needs. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. This was such a fun topic to discuss, and like I've been smiling ear to ear this entire video because I'm just so excited to show my daughter the world of plants and gardening and so many things. Like, I feel like growing garden plants would be like a whole other level of fun because then it's something that you can eat. There's a lot of like indoor growing systems that I think will be great if you are interested in doing that. I'm popping that in as like a side note because that would be really great if you didn't want to do houseplants or you wanted something with a little bit faster, like instant gratification, going from seed to fruit. Tomatoes would be really great. Herbs are great because they're like very aromatic. Both of those plants are very aromatic, and I feel like kids would really enjoy having like multiple senses stimulated at the same time. So anyway, okay, I'm gonna go now. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring. And if you have any additional tips, if you have introduced your kids to houseplants and you grow with them and you, I don't know, have involved them in any way, definitely leave your tips in the comments down below so that this video can be a resource for any parents or caregivers, uncles, aunts, whoever wants to involve kids into their houseplant collection. That would just be so much fun. I'm excited to see this like next generation of plant lovers because so many of us love plants right now, and I just cannot wait to see how our kids will be with them too. All right guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.